the second topic, that is the module. Okay, this will be explained. Module subpart or the content consists of this many subcontents, and I have divided the whole subcontent into three different groups. In the first group, which are the whenever you want to write a program, what are the first requirement is consisting of this group. Okay, that like variables, inputs, outputs, data types, constant operators, all these things will be explained in this part. Now after understanding all these component in the first group, now you how you can simplify your code, or how you can simplify your program by creating different modules, that will be explained in the second part. And in the last part of this content, we'll explain how you can use all these components whichever explained in the previous two groups to write a good program. Okay, how you can use this previously explained component for writing or for debugging a program. So all these things will be explained in detail, coming one by one. So this one, and then this one, and then this one. Look at the first group, that is the first group of the module, that is how to design a program. In the last class, I have shown you how you can design a solution. Okay, how you can represent a solution before writing a program. So now your task, if you have a solution, a well structured solution, if you have in your hand, now how you can write a program. So to design a program, okay, understand the task that the program is performed. So that has been explained in the by using the flowchart and pseudocode. So that after having flowchart and pseudocode, this problem is solved. Now determining the steps, so you can have this solution. So this designing a solution or designing a problem consists of these three parts. And next is input, output, and variables. So before going into the problem, and after having the solution in the form of flowchart, pseudocode, and algorithm, the first thing you have to decide the input, and then the output, and then the processing, right? So that has been already presented in the flowchart. Now how you can convert those things into program. So input is received, so you have to write some code or some statement, okay, for collecting the inputs, and then some line of code for writing the processing of this particular problem, and some line of statement for displaying the output in the console or in the to the user. It looks like this, the block diagram for IPO. IPO means input, processing, output. The block diagram of IPO is like this. You have the processing unit or the model. Okay, there you insert your inputs, whatever the inputs you need to process your or to solve your problem, and the process will generate an output of your problem, that is the solution. So this IPO, input, processing, output, can be represented by using a chart. Okay, and that is called IPO chart, where each of these input, processing, and output can be represented by using a column. Okay, column means the vertical representations of an attribute, where an IPO chart is simple and effective tool to use while designing a program. So this IPO chart will give you a nice understanding during the program design. Okay, the input column shows the description of the input data. So what are the input data you have to collect, and what is the meaning of those input data. All these things will be explained in the input column. The processing column shows the description of the process. That means what processes will be used, and what are the explanations of that processes that will be next. That will be presented in this processing column. And the output column, the last column, that is the part where you have to explain or to describe the output which will be produced by the processing unit of your code. So it looks like this. So you have an input column, you have an processing column, and you have an output column. For the input column, you have to describe all the inputs, whatever you need for solving this particular solving a particular problem, and processing column will be used to explain the processing part of that particular problem, and the output column will be used to explain the output this processing column or processing unit will generate, that will be represented or will be explained in this column. So for example, for calculating the pay of an employee or anybody, so you need two inputs, like the rate of the payment and how many hours that person worked. So now if you multiply these two units inputs, so that is the processing part, and the result of that multiplication will be the output. So that all this explanation will be written in here, and that's called IPO chart. That the way you can represent your input, processing, and output. Now the input, whatever you need, like here, this number of hours, the hourly pay rate, these are called the data. Okay, data to the program. So these data items, how you can represent these data items in your program, where you can store these data items in your program, and the name is variable, and the answer is called variable. In variable, you can store your data. Okay, so in your program, some components are called variable, where you can store your data for processing. Okay, and also for storing the output. So variable stays in memory. Although it looks like whenever you write a program, it looks like a variable is stored in your as a statement, but actually these variables are the memory location, name of a memory location, where the value of this data is actually stored. These variables, whichever you need for storing the data items, are actually of three types. Variables, normal variables. Okay, in three forms they are available: the normal variables, unnamed constant, and the named constant. What is this variable and unnamed constant and named constant? That we will see in the next. So in case of variable, you have some statement to assign the variable, some variable used for calculation, and then you need declaration statement for the variable and data types. So all these things will be explained next. Say for example, this is a flowchart and this is a pseudocode of a problem, and the problem is, if I give you a number, give the double of that number. So that is the problem. If I ask you to write a flowchart, the flowchart will looks like this, and if I ask you to write a pseudocode, then the pseudocode will looks like this. What is this? You have to start with these symbols I have explained in the last class. So this is the start and this is the stop, that you have to write always at the beginning of the flowchart and the end of the flowchart. These two are must. Similarly, at start and stop, in case of pseudocode, these two are also must. Now the first is the number which you need to accept for doubling. So that number you have to accept. So this is an input statement, and the result after doubling, that you have to generate as an output. Okay, so these two are the symbol for input and output, this one and this one. And now the processing, which is a rectangular box, okay, that this diamond shaped box is for input and output, and this rectangle box is for processing. So the processing is whatever the number you will collect from the user as an input, that you have to multiply with 2, that will create the double of that number, and that will be stored in the output variable, that is my answer, and that output variable will be used to display the output. So similarly, the same explanation for this one. So now this my number, my answer, all these things, what is this? Actually, in case of programming, these are called the variables, and these variables have different classifications. Okay, different types of variables are available, and different types of variables are available based on different properties, like the variable data types. Okay, so the different variable based on the data type, what kind of data actually they are storing. So that's called data type. So if it is an integer value storing that variable, like in case of previous example here, if my number is storing some integer value or floating value or like a character value, so depending on that, a variable is called integer variable, character variable, float variable, double variable. Another way is to classify it based on the size of the value. So whether it is a small value or a large value, like float and double is the same type of value, but float has a specific range and double has another specific range. So this is like it's not fixed for all programming. Different programming languages in the computer science have different types of variables. Different names of these variable types have been created, and like for there are different types of data types are available for C program. There are different types of variables are available for Java, for Python. So I'm not going into all those details right now, but in general you can see that data types variable can be classified into this integer, floating, character, double, string, all these things. Okay, now number of values stored, based on that also a variable can be classified. That means if a variable storing, whether a variable is storing a single value or a collection of value or a collection of value of different types. So ordinary variable means a variable which stores a single value. That means if I am storing my number is equal to 2, so it is an ordinary variable storing only one value. Now if I say that my number is equal to 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, so that means a list of value is storing in the variable. So that's called array type variable. An array is used to store the value. A list of values are used to store the variable. So that's why it's called array type variable. And structure type variable is a kind of variable where the multiple values are present, but all those multiple values are not of the same type. Like in case of previous example, the array type, all the values are number. But if I store 1, A, 5, 8, X, so that means these values are not of the same type. Some are string types, some are character types, some are number types. So that's why they have different. They have together create a structure. So that's why they are called structure type variables. Okay, so one way of classifying the variables based on the data types, what kind of data they are storing. Another way of classifying the variable based on the number of values storing in it. The third type of variable is where the variable is present. Like, okay, in general, I'm not going into this environment variable right now. It will not be possible for you to understand these things unless and until you have other concept to know. Okay. So just I am explaining this local and global. You know that the same way like local market and global market. Similarly, the variable can be local and global. You know that local market means which is accessible by you only. In your locality, you have a market where you can access all the products in that market, and that's why that is called local market to you. So local variable is also a variable which is accessible locally. Locally, what is that locality means, that will be explained during the modularization topic. And global variable means like same like as global market where everybody can go and purchase. So that globalization is some kind of that same kind of concept which makes or make a variable which is global, that means can be accessible by anybody in that particular space. Okay, so local variable is only accessible to the local domain. Global variable is accessible in the global space. So depending on the accessibility, that a variable can be classified. So these three ways you can classify a variable. Now, these variables actually contains container to store the data. As I said, a container means a object where you can store the value or you can keep the value or the data. A variable is a name given to a memory location where the actual data is stored. So that means a memory location. How you can identify a computer memory location? That is a hexadecimal number, and that to remember all those numbers when you are writing a program, that is not feasible. Okay, so a alternative solution is to giving a name instead of a number. Like for example, if I ask you what is your roll number, what is your number assigned by your university, or how I can identify you, if you tell me your numbers, whatever the university given to you, and if I have to remember all those numbers, it is very difficult for me to remember, right? So what I have to do, I have to give a name which specific to a number, like the name assigned by your parents, specific for a specific student. So if I have the name instead of the number, that it will be more easier for me to remember and more easier for me to use. So that's why these variables names are assigned to particular values, particular data items. Initially, before declaring variable, we have only memory, and memory is actually block of bytes. At the beginning, all these bytes in a computer storage system is at the beginning have random values. Okay, those random values are called garbage data. Okay, so that means if you have not assigned a value to a variable and something is present, then that is called the garbage data. It's not your data, it's a random data, it's a dirty data. So that's why it's called garbage data. When you try to use a variable in your program, there is a certain steps you have to follow before using that variable, and these steps sometimes called declaration of variable. So before using a variable, before to use a variable, you have to declare a variable. What is the meaning of declaration? Declaration means you have a data types, means what kind of data you want to store in that variable, and the identifier means the name of the variables. So these two things you must need before using that variable. So the data types and identifier is important. So this kind of variable declaration tells a computer that what kind of value this identifier here, this identifier can store, that can be identified by this data type. What is the name of the variable, that is can be identified by this identifier. And if initially if you have given a value, then the initial value of that identifier. If not, then an unknown value is assigned, and that is called the garbage value. So this is called declaration. Declaration is sometimes also called definition, but definition and declaration is not same. This is a statement in a programming language like extern int a. This a is the identifier, int is the data type. Okay, and this extern tells that this variable declaration is a declaration type statement. Okay, where you declare a statement a, you declare a variable a for your program. So there is another way, that as I said, the definition, sometimes it is also same as declaration. Here the variable gets stored. When you define a variable, that time you have to define a value. For example, you don't know how you can define what is the exact definition of a. If you give a value to that, the initialization operation is present, then that can be possible that a is equal to, say for example, 4 or 5 or 6. Then you can say that the value in that variable is 4, and the 4 is an integer type variable or a decimal variable or a float variable, like this way. Okay, sometimes declaration and definition variable done at the same time, like this. If you have a statement like this, that means a is created in the memory and a value has been assigned, a random value has been assigned to this. But in this case, no random value has been assigned to this. Just a variable name a has been created, but it is not pointed to any memory location. That is called declaration, just declared. Okay, not defined. But here, this statement, just if you delete this keyword, this word extern, then this statement gives you or identify a specific memory location in your computer memory, and the value inside that is the definition of that variable. So that means you can define and declare a variable at the same time, like by using this statement. If you just want to declare a variable, then you can use this statement, and this is for a specific application. For different programming language, different types of this kind of words or different types of statement are used for declaring and defining a variable. Now, initializing a variable, if you want to give a value in that variable, then that is called initializing variable with a particular value. That value may change. Say for example, if you want to add a value with a plus 2, that means if the value of a is 4 and then you want to increase by 2 and want to store at the same time in a, that is also possible in programming, in computer programs, and that time the value of a gets changed, and that's called that means the initial value is not fixed, that can change during the execution of the program. When you are initializing a variable, that time you need a data type like this. Okay, you need an identifier like this. You need an assignment operator, that means by which you can say that okay, assign this value to this, and the corresponding value which you want to store. Or you don't need the data type, just the identifier, assignment operator, and value is used. For example, this, where you have a data type, the identifier, the assignment operator, and the value. Okay, and if you have already written this statement earlier, then you just write the identifier, the assignment operator, and the value of it which you want to initialize. So this way you can also initialize a variable. There is an example of variables of two types. One is like a number, another one is like character. Okay, so basically two types, and then you have different subtypes within this number and string. Like in number you have integer, float, double. In case of string you have character, string. So in many programming languages, if you declare a variable and do not initialize it, the variable contains an unknown value until it is assigned a value, and the variable's unknown value is called garbage value for that variable. It uses a default value for some variable. This point means, say for example, in the last example here, it does not mean that in all programming languages this value of a at the beginning will be a garbage value. No, some program says that if you don't initialize a variable with a particular value, then it will have a fixed value. By default, that value will be initialized by the compiler of that program, and that value is maybe 0 or maybe 1. Usually it is a 0. If you don't initialize a value to a variable, then by default it is a 0 value in that variables. So just the previous example where you have just created a flowchart and pseudocode for calculating a double of a particular number. So in that case, if you want to declare those variables which you want to use, then you have to write this num equal to number, my number, and num equal to my answer. So these two number variable you have to declare, and a declaration is in a statement, is a kind of operation. So that's why the block is like a rectangular block. An operation you have to perform, and the operation is assignment operation, a declaration operation. So that's why it is a rectangular box. So before using this number, my number and my answer, you have to declare these two numbers in the program. Now, creating a variable name is also called creating an identifier, which will help you to identify a particular value. But remember, any name you cannot use like just for your choice. If you want to use a particular word for your variable, that is not possible. Okay, there are some words which are used by that particular specific programming language. Like for example, in Python you have a different set, in case of C you have different set, in case of Java you have a set. So except those set of words, you can use other words, and those set of words which you cannot use for naming a variable, then those words are called keywords. Okay, reserved keywords, a reserved word which you cannot be used as a variable name. So these keywords are not allowed as a variable name. They are part of the language's syntax, and if you use this keyword as variable name, then computer or the program or the compiler will identify the variable name as a part of the compiler, but when it will try to do some operation, it will have this token have some specific meaning as per the compiler goes. Okay, different compiler has different meaning for different words, different keywords. So if you by mistake if you assign those words as a variable name, it will give you errors during the execution or during the compilation. So different languages have different limits on the length of the variable name, how many character you can use for variable. Nowadays modern programming languages allow chain of characters as a variable name. But like it's virtually unlimited, but normally you don't need that long list of alphabets for naming a variable. There is a specific rules for naming a variable that I will explain after this slide. So in old languages, these variable names are consisting of only uppercase letters. These only uppercase alphabets are used for variable names in the old languages, old computer languages. But nowadays you can use capital letter or small letter. Now in modern languages, these identifiers, these variable names are case sensitive. Case sensitive means, what is the meaning of case sensitive? Case sensitive means if you have the same word like hourly wage and this hourly wage and this hourly wage, these three have different meaning, or they are three distinct names where the case sensitivity does not matter. In those kind of programming languages, these three have the same meaning, like hourly wage, and hourly wage. If you write these three, it signifies the same. Okay, but in case of modern languages like Python, like Java, like C, they are case sensitive languages. Okay, you cannot write the same word with different cases. Okay, uppercase or lowercase to identify the same variable. If you do that, then it will be compiler will identify as two different variable names, so two different identifiers. Multiple naming conventions are used for naming variable depending on the programming languages, and those naming conventions are like camel casing or lower camel casing. What is this? Lower camel casing means the first alphabet of the first word will be the smaller one, and first alphabet of the remaining word are capital. So camel casing is called first alphabet of the first word. That's hourly wages. Hourly wages is consist of two words, right? Hourly and wage. So hourly wage in this case, the first word hourly, here H, the alphabet of the first word is a smaller one, and the first word of the remaining word, first alphabet of the remaining word are capital. Like this last name, last is a word and name is a word. So the first alphabet of the first word is small, and the first alphabet of the remaining word are capital. So that's why this is called camel casing or lower camel casing. There is another one is called Pascal casing or called upper camel casing, where first alphabets of all words are capital or uppercase. So that's why it's called upper camel casing. Okay, like here H and W are the first alphabet of the two word hourly and wage. So this H and W are uppercase. Here L and N are the first word of the first alphabet of the two word last name. So L and N must be in the uppercase. So this why is called upper camel casing. Another naming convention is called Hungarian notation. Okay, Hungarian notation. What is this? Here the type of the data, a type of the variable, type of the identifier is actually also included with the variable name. So these hourly wages or last name, hourly wages is a number. So num value is included with the variable name, and last name is a string type variable. So string keyword will be used at the beginning before the variable name. So that's called Hungarian notation. Snake casing, the underscore is used to divide the two word in the variable name, and mixed case with upper underscore, that means here you can use the capital letter at the beginning for the first alphabet of the word with underscore separating the two words. So that's the mixed case with underscore. And kebab case, hyphen is used to separate the two words. Like in case of mixed case, you have underscore. In case of kebab case, you have hyphen, which will separate the two words. So these are the ways you can follow to name a variable. Another thing is, there are universal rules are available or present by which you can write a name. That is, variable name must be one word. You cannot write two words. Here it looks like they are two words within a variable, but it's actually a single word consisting of two English words. If you give a space between these two words, then it will be a two word, and that is not possible to identify a single variable. In modern days languages, if you give space between these two words, it will be actually two variable names. Variable name must be one word. That is the first rule. Second rule is, variable name must start with a letter. It's not, you cannot start a variable name with like one last name, two last name. You cannot write. You can write last name one, last name two. That is possible, but with variable name cannot start with a number. It will always start with a letter. Also, you cannot start a variable name with a special character like dollar or hash or at the rate, any kind of special character. You cannot use them for writing a variable name at the beginning. Variable names should have some appropriate meaning. Like, for example, you cannot write XYZ or ABC for some variable. Why? Because, say for example, you have written a program, and after 2 months or 3 months you will have your final exam, and now on that time you want to revise your subject, and when you are looking at the program, you are confused with the meaning of the name ABC or XYZ, whatever you have written. Instead of, say for example, if you write last name instead of ABC, so whenever you will see that program later time, you will identify that this variable is actually identifies the last name of the particular object. Okay, so that's why always give a appropriate meaning which corresponds to that variable. Okay, so the variable name must be a meaningful word corresponds to the variable. So what are the data types are available, or what is the use of the data type? Data type actually tells the compiler that what kind of value it is storing, or what kind of value it has. So this data type tells the type of the value, or what values, what kind of values it is storing. How the item is stored in computer memory, like for example, if it is a character value, or if it is a floating point value, or if it is a decimal point, integer value, or number value, or alphanumeric value, and how you can represent that variable, that value of that variable into memory. Next one is the what operation can be performed. Data types also tells you that what kind of operation you can perform. If it is a number value, then you can perform numeric operation. If it is a string value, then you can perform a string operation, like for example concatenation instead of addition. Say for example, if it is a numeric value, they say it is 4 and 5. If you want to add them, then 4 plus 5 you have to write it. So the 4 plus 5, that means 9. But if it is a string type value, then if you write 4 plus 5, that means if it is a string type, then it is not 9, it is 4 5, that is 45. So what kind of operation you want to perform, that or how that operation can be performed, that can be identified by this data type. Okay, so in general these data types are of two types: number and numeric and non-numeric. Numeric are the number and non-numeric are the string. Numeric, the number can be like based on the different size of the variable values. So that can be like smaller numerics data types, larger numeric data types, fractional numeric data types, whole numeric data types. Okay, non-numeric data type is like a single character or multiple character. If it is a single character, then it is character. If it is a multiple character, then together it's called a string. Some programming languages are very strict about assigning this type. So special feature of some programming languages prevent assigning values to an incorrect data type. So because of their strictness, you cannot assign like string type values to a numeric variables. That will give you an error. The opposite, like if you want to store a number values into a string type variable, that will give different meaning. So it always not will give you an error. Sometimes it will give a wrong result. Like if you want to store a floating point value. Floating point value means 4.5 into an integer value. That means where you can store only integer like 4. So if you want to store floating point variable 4.5 into a variable 4, then it is called it will have a information loss. The new value variable contains only 4. It's not 4.5. Say for example, if I am declaring a variable int is equal to 4 and another variable int a is equal to 4.5. So in this case, in this previous case, the value is correct. But if you want to print the value of this a, it will again give you the value a is equal to 4 because a is integer type variable. But if you want to write float, okay, and then if you want to assign say float b, okay, equal to 4.5, and then if you want to write a equal to b, then the value of a again will be 4 because this floating point value cannot be stored here. And now if you do the same thing in the opposite way, like for example here you want to store like b is equal to 4, then what will happen? The value of b, new value of b will be 4.0. It's not 4 only, it's 4.0, and this 4.5, 0.5 will be overwritten. Now, so these data types are of primitive types, like which is actually the basic data types are called the primitive data types, like character, integer, short, float, double, and they have their specific range. Like a signed character have a specific range from minus 128 to plus 127. A normal integer will have a range like this. But if it is short integer, then we will have a range from 32,768 to 32,767 from minus to plus. Okay, in this range you can only have you can only store the value within this range. If it is not within this range, then there will be a problem. It is possible, but there will be a problem in the execution. So now from these primitive data types, some data types can be created, and like as I said earlier, like data types or a variable can consist of multiple values, and that value sometimes of the same type, and those values sometimes are of different types. Data types can be created, and those data types are called derived data types, like an array or structure. And this actually also depends on the different programming languages. This kind of operation actually performed in different ways. Next is the character set. As I said, the for string, like the integer derived data types and the primitive data types, in case of character variable, we have character values. To store them in a computer, you have character data types, okay, to store the character variable. Like character variable means a single alphanumeric data, single alphabets. Either it is number or it is a character. Alphanumeric symbols are like letter, number, and special symbol that can be given as an input via keyboard can be considered as a character, and that can be stored in a character variable. For a multiple character together is called a string, and a character can be identified by this single inverted comma. Okay, this single inverted comma will be used to identify a character, and for double inverted comma is used to identify as a string. Okay, so remember, whenever you write a program to identify a single character or a character type variable values, you need to use this single inverted comma. If you want to identify a string type value, then you have to use this double inverted comma for that particular value. Next is constant, unnamed constant and named constant. Unnamed constant are, you do not have identifiers like a variable do. Like in case of unnamed constant, that can be numeric and string, but those unnamed constant will be present in a double inverted comma. If you see like an example of a statement like display I have dollar in my account. So this is the statement, and this is the operation you have to perform, displaying operation, the output operation. So the statement is I have dollars in my account. So these I have in my account are two unnamed constant, and this dollar is a variable. Okay, the value of this variable will be displayed in the screen that I have $10 in my account, or I have $50 in my account. So the value of this dollar will be displayed, and the sentence will be represented in the screen like that way. So these are called an unnamed constant. You don't have any identifier by which you can identify that this is equal to I have, this is equal to in my account, like this. So this can be alphanumeric, this can be a number, a list of number, that is also possible. Now the named constant. Named constant is similar like a variable. Okay, like a variable, you declare the variable name and assign some values. It is like this, the named constant. But this named constant value does not change during the execution, except it can assign a value only once. So like a variable, but you can only assign a value in that variable only once, and that value kept throughout the program. You cannot change it. A useful name is assigned for a particular value, like for example assigning a value of say for example pi 3.14. Okay, it's a value of pi. So every time wherever you want to use pi in your program, you have to write 3.14. But if you want to avoid this fractional value 3.147 to whatever it is, just like if you want to write pi, then what you have to do, you have to declare a named constant pi, and you have to initialize with the value of that fractional value, and then in the next subsequent line you can use that pi as a named constant. So value will never change during the execution. Named constant makes your program easier to understand by eliminating magic numbers, like for example magic numbers like 0.06 or 3.147 to anything. Say for example, if a program uses a sales tax rate, say for example an interest sales tax rate 6%, so you want to create a named constant like number named constant. So sales tax rate is the name of the identifier, okay, and this num is the number of the type of the variable. This identifier type of this identifier is number, and the name of this identifier is sales tax rate, and the value assigned to this is 0.06. So whenever you want, you have to write 0.06. Instead of that, you can write sales tax rate. And this way, like all capital letter with underscore, actually in case of programming, identified as a named constant. So like for example tax amount equal to price multiplied by 0.06, that can be replaced by a statement like this. Okay, so this is more meaningful to this kind of sentence statement. The last statement with named constant are more meaningful to the programmer to explain a program and without giving more trouble to the next programmer, whoever who wants to modify that program. Next one is arithmetic operations or statement. In a program, there are different type of statements are available, like assignment statement. The way I have explained earlier, that assignment statement is a equal to 5. That means a is assigned with a value 5. So that's why this is called assignment statement. And so this is a single statement. Assignment statement is kind of single statement. But there are some statement which is called compound statement. Is a group of statement is composed grouped together and called a compound statement. And this compound statement is actually known as a block of statement. Okay, a set of statement can be called as a compound statement. And a particular assignment, say for example the assignment operator, you have an operand. So an assignment consists of operand and opcode. The operand here is the variable name and the value, and the opcode is actually the equal sign. So operand is whatever you are using, and opcode is identifying what kind of operation you want to perform. So you want to perform operation, assignment operation. So this equal sign is an opcode, and the value whatever you want to assign on operand. So equal sign is an assignment operator. An example of binary operator where you have two operands like a equal to b. So you have two operands for as an operator. So that's why it's called binary operator. Meaning it requires two operand, one on each side. An operand is simply a value used by the operator. It has right associativity. That means right to left. So A equal to B, that means B's value will be assigned to A. It's not A's value will be assigned to B. That means if I write A equal to B, it means B's value will be assigned to A and not A's value will be assigned to B. So always the right associativity from right to left. So 4 type of instructions. So input statement, output statement, that I have already explained, this input statement, output statement. Okay, by using a flowchart and pseudocode, how an input and output statement looks like. The type declaration statement, like by using how you can declare a type of a variable, or how you can declare a variable of a particular specific type, that is type declaration statement. Arithmetic statement, by which you can perform the arithmetic operation, and the control statement, by which you can control the execution. In the last class, I have shown you some examples of if, while, then the repetition structure, the loop structure. So that can be the control structure. So those structure, if you want to write in a program, in a statement, as a statement, then those statements are called control statement. And all the mathematical operations, whatever you want to perform, the statement corresponding to that is called arithmetic statement. And the arithmetic statement consists of different operators like arithmetic operator, logical or relational operator, bitwise operator, assignment operator, and all these operators are available. Arithmetic operators are like plus, minus, multiplication, division, modulo, exponent. These operations you can perform in a particular in a program. And in programming language, when you can combine arithmetic statement, every operator follows rule of precedence, so that when you have multiple arithmetic operations are available in a particular statement in a program, then which one to execute first, that rule of precedence, order of operations are actually followed, that which operation to execute first. The rule of precedence for the basic arithmetic statement are as follows: that expression, the parenthesis will be evaluated first. Okay, the parenthesis within that, whatever you have, that will be expressed, or that will be evaluated first, then the multiplication and division, and then from the addition to subtraction. Then the logical and relational operator, as I said, logical and relational operator is like equal to, not equal to. These are the logical equal, whether A equal to B, or x equal to y, or A is not equal to B. Like this way, if you want to identify something, that first name is equal to last name, or first name is not equal to last name, like this kind of checking, if you want to perform this kind of operation, you want to write, then you have to use these things. Say, for example, A is greater than B, or A is less than B, A is greater than equal to B, A is less than equal to B. This kind of, if you want to perform this kind of operation in your program, then you need to use this equal to sign, not equal to sign, less than, greater than, not equal to, less than equal to, greater than equal to symbols. These are logical and logical or and logical not. Okay, so this relational operation and the logical operations are available to write any comparison operation. The next one is module. How you can, or why, how you can use a module, and or why you can use a module, and when you can use a module. Say, for example, this is a set of statement in your program. Okay, a long list of statements. Now, at the next time, after 1 year, if you want to check this statement, and if I ask you to modify this program or any of these statement after checking, then it will be very difficult. For a long list of statement in a program, it will be almost difficult or impossible to change or to modify the program. So instead of that, if you create a group with some set of statement, and then those group can be represented as a group, and then if I ask you to change a particular operation, and if you go to that particular group and check whether which statement you have to modify, then that will be a little bit more easier. That is called, that grouping of statement is called modularization. So that is one advantage. I will explain you more advantage of this modularization procedure. So writing program as one long series of steps, not a good practice. So instead of that, you break down into groups and of smaller tasks. Each of these group will be used for a particular task. or a particular small unit of work. That's why if I ask you to do or change a particular operation, a particular unit of operation, then you go for that particular piece of code and then change it instead of looking at whole program from top to bottom. So these smaller units are identified or will be named as with different word or different keywords like module, subroutine, procedure, function, method, whatever it is, it the meaning is same. Like Visual Basic uses procedure or sub procedure, C++ uses function, C hash, Java and other object oriented languages uses method. Programming like COBOL basics are used the subroutine name. So whatever it is, the concept is same. It is or grouping the statements, a list of statement based on the task. So the process of breaking down a large program into module is called modularization or functional decomposition. Okay, decomposing a program, a long list of program based on the function. So that's why it's called functional decomposition or modularization. It is breaking down a long program. 3 reasons to modularize a large program: provide abstraction, helps multiple programmer to work on a problem. So like for example, if a problem can be divided into different groups, and if I have 5 students to solve that particular problem, then I can ask each of that student to solve a particular problem, and they will solve that particular problem and provide me the solution, and I will combine them in a parent program where all these group of solution will be incorporated and will be created a final solution for the problem. So that's why the multiple group of programmer can work on the same problem simultaneously, allow you to reuse work more easily. So like for example, if I ask you to write every day's routine, okay, and say the most of the work in lockdown situation, you are staying at home and most of the things are like same. So instead of writing all the steps every day, what you can do, you can write those set of steps which you perform most of the days, you group them together and just give a point that I performed something written in page 5. And then tomorrow you instead of writing the same statement, you just write I performed a group of tasks written in page 5. So instead of writing the same thing again and again, you can reuse whatever you have written earlier. That will help you or the programmer to write a solution for a particular problem by using any programming language. Like a variable, for a module also you can declare, define and call. Declaring means write a name of that module with the type of the module, and defining means what operation this module will perform. That exact set of statement will be the definition of that module. And calling a module means from a program you want to call a particular subprogram or a group of module, then you have to call those previously written modules in your current module by using some procedure, and that procedure is called calling a module. Like for example, assigning a value to a variable, you call it assignment operator, right? So similarly, for calling a module from one module to another module, that's called calling a module and calling a statement. To create a module, you must have a header. Header includes the module identifier and possibly other necessary identifying information like types of the variable, it accepts type of the variable, it returns, depending on the programming language. Actually, this header depends. Okay, naming a module is similar to naming a variable. If you want to write the first name of a person, then the variable name will be first name. If you want to write a module for cooking rice, so the module name will be such that by looking at the name, you can say that this module actually explains the steps for cooking rice. And the body is actually consists of set of steps which are used to solve the problem for which this module has been created. And the return statement, usually the last statement, but sometimes if you want to stop the execution at some point of time and want to return back based on some condition, then this return statement can be at some point in the middle of the module also. Anywhere if you find this, or if you want to write this return statement, that means from this return statement, program will identify that you have to finish the execution there, and you have to return back to the parent module from where child module has been called. Okay, identify the point at which the control returns to the program or module that call the module. Okay, from where this module actually called, you have to return back your control. In nowadays, in most of the programming languages, the most advanced programming languages, this you don't need the return statement. Okay, sometimes if you don't include this return statement, automatically after finishing the execution, it will return back to the calling program. For example, this is a set of statement, say like declaration, string name, number, balance. So two variable has been declared. One is string type, another one is num type. String type variable name is name, num type variable name is balance. So you collect the value of name and balance from the user. You want to display the output, that ABC Manufacturing, output 47 Park Lane, output Omro WI 54963, output customer name. So this is the address of the customer and the total balance of that particular customer. So this is a set of statement you want to execute. Now, if you want to write this set of statement in a pseudocode, then it looks like this. So this is the flowchart. This is the pseudocode of this corresponding flowchart. Now, for module, as per the modularization, what you can do, instead of all these statement 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 maybe, where instead of displaying one by one, what you can do, you can write a module that display address information, and then you write all this address information in a box. You write the module name, and then you write the return statement at the end, and in between you just group them together, whatever the steps you have written in the last flowchart, and then use this symbol. As I said in the last class, that this is some advanced symbol which you sometimes need to write a set of steps. So this is where you can write set of steps. Okay, and this set of steps are output of addresses, and the name of this this function, this module, is called display address information. So this is a particular flowchart where you can call this display address info, and again after executing all this, you can return back here. Now, if you want to write another program where this same piece of code you want to write, then you just write the beginning and end of that particular program, and after that, wherever you need this piece of code, you can directly write this box. Okay, instead of writing these statements multiple times, you can just write this box, and somewhere in this document you have to represent what the meaning of this box is by using this set of diagram. Similarly, for pseudocode is like this: display address information in first bracket, and return, it will display all this information, and after executing one by one. So first it will execute this line, this line, this line, and this line. After that, it will execute, it will come here, and it will immediately return to this, immediately go to this place, and it will execute this line, and this line, and again return back here and execute this line and this line. Now, a main program executes a module by calling it. To call a module, use its name to invoke the module, like the last example. To call a module, you need to use the name of the module. Okay, name of the module is this, and to call this module, you have to use the name of the module. Okay, now this is the very general syntax. For a program specific syntax, every program has different syntax for calling, for displaying, for declaring, for defining. Each of these operation, every individual program has their own syntax, and if you want to write a module for a particular program, you have to follow the syntax of that particular program. Whatever I am explaining here is a general concept of modularization. Say, for example, if you have multiple modules in a program calling simultaneously one by one, or one module within another module in a nested manner, like A is calling B, and B is calling C, and C is calling D, and then you have to execute one by one. After at some point of A, you have to stop there and you have to call and you have to execute B. And at some point of B, you have to execute, like for example, this way. Say there is a program A consisting of some statement, okay? And at some point of statement, you want to call B, and B is somewhere here where you have set of statement. And at some point of B, you call C. So in B, say you call C from B and you call B from A. So by using this parenthesis, you can limit these boxes. Okay, so you have a program or you have a function like this. So you have a program A, from there you a module A, from there you call a module B, and module B is written here, and from module B you need module C. So module C is somewhere else. So this is called nested calling. In this kind of situation, how the program compiler will understand who is calling whom, and after that where to return. After finishing C, you have to return back to B and then execute this set of statement, and after finishing this set of statement, return back to A and then finish this set of statement and return back from A. So this kind of information is written in a stack, okay, in memory address in the stack, where the computer keeps track of the correct memory address in the stack to return after executing a module. Where to return, after whom, that kind of information is actually stored in a stack. And variables in a module, if you have a module A and if you declare some variable X inside that module, then the X can be used only within that module A. So here this, if you have a module, then the local variable and the global variable concept actually works. Where this variable can work is actually the scope of that variable. Like variable and constants are local to the module in which they are declared. Global variable and constant can be accessed from anywhere in the program and can be accessed by multiple modules present in that particular program. Local variable is declared inside a module. It cannot be accessed by the statement that are outside the module. Different module can have same local variable names. Like for example, if you look at the example here, in function A, you can write num L name. You can write a variable name num L name, and also you can write in B, you can also write a variable name L name, because this L name has a scope within this B, and this L name has a scope within this A. So if you pass this variable name here to this B, then that is called message passing or argument passing arguments. So an argument is any piece of data that is passed to a module when the module is called. Okay, that name can be same, can be different, that does not matter, and that sometimes create problem depending on the language you are using. A parameter is a variable that receives an argument that is passed into the module. Okay, it's like this. That value is a parameter name which is passed to that module double number, where a piece of code is written like this, where value module will accept will be doubled by multiplying 2 and will be returned from the module, or will be displayed from the module. Okay, like this way. You have variable names here in the module. They are local to that module here. You cannot access the module name from there to this place. This line 1, line 2, line 3 cannot be accessed here. In case of pseudocode, you can write something like the same kind of variable declaration within a particular method like this way, which you cannot access from this parent method, but they can be displayed from the current method display address information. So these are the end of the second group of content of that module. Third group is like creating or how to use them, or how to use all the concept whatever explained till now for writing a good program, for debugging a program. So that is actually the part of this group. Features of a good program design: provides program command where appropriate. That means write set of hints inside the program, which will in future time, in later time, that command will help you to understand the program, understand the operation, understand the variables, understand the output. So this kind of help to understand all this meaning of this statement, command are normally used. So if good program design, you must have some command inside your program. Second thing is choose identifier thoughtfully, which I have already explained in the variable declaration time. That instead of writing any xyz abc1 xyz2 like this way, you cannot, or you should not declare a name, or you should not write a name of a variable. The name must be some meaningful name like last name, middle name, or amount, or salary, like this. You cannot write num a. Later on, when you, after 1 year, if you look at the program, then you will be confused what is the meaning of a, whether it is a salary or the age. Attempt to design clear statement within your program and module. Clear statement means a complete statement at the same line, in the same line. Don't break the line anywhere in the middle and then arbitrarily give a set of tab or a space during writing of a program. In some programming it will give error, in some programming it will not give error, but it will make difficulties to understand the statement, what the actual statement actually you want to write. That understanding in that case will be a problem. So write clear prompt and echo input. Clear prompt means, I have an example here. Enter a number. Then later on, in after 2 months or 3 months, if you look at the same program, it will be difficult for you that what kind of number you have asked from the user, whether it is a salary or it is an age. Clear prompt, write or insert your age, insert your salary of a particular month. So this kind of prompt is very useful. And echo inputs or use inputs taken by the user previously for displaying or for writing the prompt. And the fifth step is continue to maintain good programming habits, which will give you a good understanding of the program. In future, to modify those programs, it will help. This kind of programming practice will help you a lot. Will save your time and energy. Using program commands like this, that what is the meaning of this variable. It can be written in a single line, it can be written in multiple line. This is like in case of pseudocode. In case of flowchart, you can use this kind of notation. Say a rectangular box, but without this third arc. Use a dotted line here to point out for which you are using this explanation or the command, the way you can write the declaration statement or the command statement in your flowchart. Avoid confusing line break, as I said, for clear statement. Avoid use temporary variables to clarify long statement. Say, for example, in case of mathematical problems, if a mathematical problem is too large, then instead of writing the whole mathematical equation at the same place, break down in smaller pieces, use temporary variables, and use that temporary variables for the next step of in the equation. So in this way, you can avoid confusion, and you can easily modify the code for future time. Writing clear prompts, like prompts must be given when an input is retrieved from a user. Prompt are used both in command line and GUI. So it does not mean that whenever you are writing a program in a GUI, means graphical user interface system, it's not that always you have to give prompt in that kind of application. In command line application also, when you are writing a program in command line, that time also you have to write good prompt for the user. Like, for example, if you write please enter a number, or please enter a 5-digit catalog order number, or a 5-digit catalog order number appears to the right of the item's picture in the catalog, please enter it now. So the as detailed the prompt, as good is for the user. This can also be used for another important point is echoing the input, like please enter the balance. Just if you write please enter the balance, that is also one way of prompting. But if you write that please enter the balance due for a particular employee or particular customer, then it will be more helpful for the programmer and for the user to understand the meaning of that particular sentence, or to write a particular value or to give a particular value to the program. Next point is hand tracing a program. Hand tracing a program means if you write a program, now how when you are executing a program, before running it into the machine, how the program, whether the program will give you a correct result or not, that you can find out by using hand tracing a program. Okay, hand tracing a simple debugging process for locating hard to find errors in a program with different input values. Execute the program by hand and then try to find out the errors if there is exist with all possible different possible combination of inputs. If your program executes successfully by hand, then you can say that your program is correct, and now you can convert that flowchart or the pseudocode in a corresponding programming language, and you can use that application for latter purpose. So it helps you to locate errors that are not obvious by using hand tracing. It will be useful for locating uncommon errors. Okay, this is also known as desk checking, because instead of computer debugging, it is actually performed on a desk with paper and pen. So that's why the desk checking. It is often helpful in finding mathematical mistakes, like the way you solve a mathematical problem. So the same way, if you perform for a particular problem, computer flowchart or pseudocode, then that's called that hand tracing, and that can be used for mathematical equations to find mistakes. To hand trace a program, you construct a chart, a column for each variable, a row for each line, and you step through each statement, observing the operation that is taking place, and then record the value that each variable will hold after the statement execute. That means it is like a table where each of the column will be a variable in that particular table. Here, this is can be variable L name. Here, the salary variable is there. Here, say hours, the person worked, and this can be the rate, and this can be salary. Now, for each line of statement, there is a for particular employee, what is the value of that L name, what is the rate, what is the hour, what is the salary, that you have to write here. Say, for example, at the beginning you have some L name like A, or some L name like, say, my name is, and then the rate is not still defined, so it is a question mark. So similarly, this is a question mark at line statement 1. In statement 2, you have the same value of that variable, but now you accept the rate from the user. So rate is a $5 per minute, and then hours, let's say like 30 minutes. So that now the next is yet not executed. The next line, the same value will be present, and also yet not executed in the third line. So like this way, here you calculated, and the value will be 150. Okay, 30 minutes, $5, $150. So like this way, you can check the value of each variable in at each statement, and then you can check at which place this value is actually changing and getting the wrong output. So next point is how to make program documentation. As I said that earlier, that commenting is a good practice for write program. So this kind of command can be used for writing documents like external documentation and internal documentation. External documentation is mainly for the user, the end user. Okay, and internal documentation is for the programmer who is writing the program or who will modify the program. This external documentation is consists of the documents such as a reference guide that describes the program's features and tutorials that teach the user how to operate the program. So if you look at the external documentation, then how a particular software can be used, that is actually written. So that is an example of external documentation. A programmer is responsible either for writing the whole user guide, or maybe some portion of the user guide, and there are some other person who will write the remaining portion for the documentation. So there is internal documentation. It is specifically for programmer that explain which part of the program works in how the specific portion of the program works. It appears as a command in the program code, like as I said earlier, that commenting in a program is good practice. So this command will help the programmer to understand the code. Comment are short note placed in different part of the program. It explains how this part, those part of the program works. These are ignored by the compiler and interpreter. These are intended for human reader for the program's code and not the computer. So this internal documentation can be of two types, like block commands and line commands. Block commands are at the beginning of the program. Block commands are present at the beginning of the program. Usually, it takes several lines of statement, and it actually appears at the beginning of the program, and how explain what is the operation performed by this program. Instead of a line by line explanation, it gives a summary of the operation. It lists the name of authors who is responsible for writing this program. Okay, given the date of the program, when the program was last modified, and any other important information. That are the block command. Then the line command. This command occupies a single line, but not necessarily the entire line. Command are non-executable statement, and this kind of command, even present in the code, will be ignored by the compiler when forming the object file. Remember, in the last class I said that every program before executing, it converts into object file. So this kind of line command, block command, actually ignored by the compiler during the object file creation. In C, in a programming language C, or in most of the programming languages, like this double hash or star are used for creating this kind of commands. And that's all for today.